So welcome to the Node.js Node Add-on API team meeting for July 12th, 2024. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at things that were tagged for milestone 11. Let me just get to that list and I'll share it. That too. Okay, so share screen. Okay, that should be the right one. Start out with any news that we would share on Node API or related things.
Yeah, regarding the version of Node add-on API, I just published a fixed version of 7.1.1. I just posted the link in the chat, which contains a small fix to the packages and engine field we just talked about last week.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for doing that. That's great. And so anybody who's worried about that, they can upgrade to that version. So that's definitely good. Any other
Also,
news?
we have published version of 8.1.0 last week.
Okay, so bunch of different versions, new versions. So that's definitely good news. Any other
Yeah,
things to share?
that's all for me.
Okay, then let's look at, I don't know if there's anything people want to bring up in terms of the warp message, SQLite performance, coverage. Any of those or debug testing? If not, I'm just gonna go and look into the stale issues one. I think we talked about the one last week. That was probably the one I think Chenzong you just mentioned here, right?
Yeah, we can. Well, it's yeah, the PI is closed, so I think we have nothing to do with it.
Yep.
Maybe we can just comment that we just published it.
Yeah, do you want to just comment on there and say, hey,
Yeah, sure.
ESP, whatever. Yeah, we talked about it, we agreed, so there's now a new release that you can,
Yeah, I can comment there.
okay, perfect. Then I'll delete this because I think we've dealt with that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Perfect. So, okay, we're good. So let's move then on to, we can go over to the API repo and look at issues. So this one, Chenzong, you opened. Is there anything we should discuss on that?
Yeah, it's just a small fix to the tag name that the release place automatically created. It includes the component name in the tag name, which you can find it in the link I shared in the post. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the tag name is like node dash add-on dash API dash v.1.0. So it's not our convention, so I just make it like our conventional tag name.
Okay. So because we don't need the node add-on part. Is that the
Yeah,
yeah? Okay.
it's just a small fix.
Okay. Since I'm already looking here, I just and then these are just the regular. I'll get doing those. We don't have Kevin, so I don't know if there's anything to chat about the Node DC one this week.
I looked at the document that he posted, and it looks good to me. So the documentation for it, it sounds like we're agreed on the naming convention. So
Yeah.
it seems like this is converging.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, and I can see I should go take a look. Oh, and I see Kevin is here, so let me promote him. Sorry about that. Didn't notice.
No worries.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello.
If you want to add on to that one, we were just talking about your PR with the NoGC one.
No, I just updated the docs and it sounds like they're good to go. So I'll just continue working on the docs and making sure everything lines up and I'll just keep it updated.
Okay, great. I'll take a look at issues. The formatting inconsistency, I think we talked about that last time.
Yeah, I think we basically just said like look at what's the convention if there is any
Yeah.
in core and go from there. I haven't had any time to look at that.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So otherwise, I don't see anything too new here. Is there anything of these that we should chat about?
I guess we can close that next release issue 1521.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, okay. Turning on experimental and when CI win with it? Still waiting on something?
No. It was a little oversight from that PR. So then we just
Right.
pointed that we just needed to turn it on.
Okay, I was just wondering, I thought, for some reason, I thought there was something blocking at some point, but if it's just a matter of turning it on, we have our reminder there. Okay, anything else before I flip over to the node project? Oh, there. Okay, so I see this was opened recently. I don't know if anybody's looked at it or. This is just an example of creating a buffer, external buffer. Slow. This depends on how many you create. But
Do we understand what the cause of the slowness? So because we do have like more member allocations than needed, or
yeah, it looks like it's creating an external buffer in a loop. I think it doesn't sound like anybody's had a chance to look at it, so maybe we should leave it on as one
Yeah,
of the,
first I see it.
yeah. So let's leave on until next time, and maybe if we've had a chance to take a look, we can dig into it a little bit more. This one,
yeah, CI was failing yesterday. I just rebased and
okay.
see how it goes. I don't know why. Like I just assumed because maybe it was something in our source base, like it was 2 weeks old. So let's see.
Yeah, sometimes restarting, like rebasing and restarting is a good way to go. Okay.
If somebody can sign off after right now, because it will not allow me to start CI after rebase. But
Okay.
it's I didn't do any other changes, just rebase at this point.
Okay, I'll put maybe if anybody who's did review wanna to just review, I'll try and look this afternoon otherwise. Otherwise, I don't see anything new. Are there any ones that we should discuss?
It's like about the naming.
Yeah.
We have that issue open and it sounds like we have convergence, but please remind me, were we gonna do the rename like as a non-breaking change, or since this is experimental and all, it's okay to just simply rename and that's it in core? I forget what we agreed on because I can just
think in
type that
core
font
we
thing.
wanted to just add some alias.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so then I'll open the PR to add those aliases.
Okay.
Oh, and I'll change the documentation to not even refer to node.js anything. It'll just be updated to refer to basic or not at
Exactly.
all.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. So like anybody who's reading it uses the new one.
Yes.
We don't break anybody, and we can see like in the PR, like it's just a couple of lines or something.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
that works pretty well.
Okay. All right, I'll get on that.
The quick question, like, are we going to keep this alias as we go to, like, if then we stamp a real version on this change?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think if we add that alias, maybe we remove it once it goes out of experimental.
Maybe
Yeah.
like
I think,
alias
yeah,
right
like
now and maybe
if we publish a new version, like a new Node API version, then I think that would be okay.
Okay.
The only question, would that break? Right, so we'd leave it in an experimental, but then yeah, if you actually said like, I'm going to use not experimental, I'm using the Node API version, that would be fine.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing, one effect that it would have though is people who just leave their stuff as experimental would all of a sudden be broken when we publish the new version of Node API. Which, yeah, because like experimental, after you publish a new version of Node API, experimental is basically an empty set afterwards, right? So it doesn't include the alias or anything else anymore. And if the stable version doesn't include the alias and the experimental version doesn't include the alias, then they will be broken if they haven't renamed their stuff. But I mean,
in the experimental, the alias, right?
leave the alias on in and do we leave that on in like in perpetuity or?
Yeah, it's a good question.
So, you know, if if they say experimental, then they should, to some extent, expect breakage. Like we're already going above and beyond the Call of Duty here.
How likely, like, again, I'll come back to like, we did get a bunch of people complaining the last time. So like, how likely is this will it have to just be people who opted into the current Node.js stuff, or is it like break everybody again? It's kind of I see Chen Zhang has his hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing that I would like to bring up is that in the document we have said that APIs have to be marked as experimental for at least one minor Node.js release before it can be marked as stable. So I guess if we make a new alias, then it cannot be in the same Node.js release we mark it as stable.
So
Sorry, you
I
are
guess,
muted.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say that's fair.
so back to like the who is it going to break? Is it like, has everybody had to opt in now? And then we, you know, within a month they now are like broken again, or I'm just, you know, if it's like, hey, it's just going to be a very small subset of people, then it's probably not so bad. But if it's just thinking in terms of like how long we leave the alias, right?
Mm. Oof.
I mean, or like and experimental. How did everybody just now go to non-experimental from the last time? I don't know. I don't have a good sense of that. But
what if we add new alias right now and remove all, and say we remove all the alias, say like 1 month from now, and you make it clear, like inside in this PR where you introduce new alias, we will keep We'll let people to some time to move to new alias, but we kind of before we even go to stable version, we remove old alias.
That's a good, yeah, that's a good solution, I think.
From the experimental.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean we're already within the experimental domain, right? And so if we give folks like a month of Slack to update all their experimental stuff, then then that's more than we promised, because with experimental we said, well, we can break you anytime, right? That's what
Right, but
experimental means. And
we
so
just
we're
struggle
already
with,
committed.
like, is that it's still good to understand how many people will be affected, right? Because it's not always like, hey, I'm actively experimenting with stuff. We found people who had like experimental on
Yeah.
in their or their dependencies have experimental on,
And we can offer like a very small fix, like say, if you want to keep this alias, this is what you need to write in your code. Like we can just simply say, then we're removing our alias from our header file. We just simply say,
Right.
you can add this alias to your code if you want to keep it.
Yes. Yeah,
I
like
have wonder, like, would it, yeah, like because in core, things can be experimental for a long time, and the expectation is that no, you're not actually broken. Like, even though it's experimental, it's very rare that like people are actually broken by changes in experimental. Um, now I think lots of people wish it wasn't that way, and it would, and so it's like in this case, it would be like we really don't expect people to like. It's almost like we should either break people every month. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just unsustainable to use experimental. Every month, experimental takes something over that will cause you to have to do some work, or things not to work. Or like in the, in because what tends to happen is like, yeah, it's experimental because we want people to try it out, but then like if people actually do try it out and use it for real, then they're upset when we say, well, like, yeah, but it was experimental, so we now broke it and all your stuff has this. So there's still a bit of a tension there in terms of.
I
So
think like one
I
of
guess,
the reasons why people use an experimental, their production code, that some of our APIs stay in experimental state for too long. Like,
right, and that's where I'm back to, like, should we have something that means you just can't do that? But on the other hand, will people then just like, well, I'm not trying this because like if I turn on experimental, then I never get, like, I have to do something too often, so I'm never actually going to do it. Because a lot of time, like the common path is it's in experimental and it just becomes stable.
yeah, technically speaking, this will be not ABI break. I think what we would ask people to, if they want to continue use the old alias, they can continue it. But we only break in build.
mhm.
This is usually kind of much cheaper change than, for example, ABI incompatibility.
Yeah.
Right, but it's because add-ons are built, like, unless you pre-build them, lots of add-ons, like, you do your npm install and they get compiled then.
Oh,
Basically, you then break
Yeah.
anybody, like, so some dependency has published something, they use experimental under the covers, you do your npm install, you don't even know you're using the experimental thing in the dependency.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we do npm install and it breaks, right? And it's
so what if we introduce new alias? Then say we give like a month or two. We, for example, do our best search in say GitHub for this
right.
old alias. Try to identify these authors to switch to the new alias. And
Yeah, that's what we did with remember when we deprecated new buffer? I actually went around and posted issues on different projects on GitHub saying,
Yeah.
yo, please move to buffer from, because new buffer is going away.
I mean, the other thing is like so I just still don't quite understand, like, is this a break everybody or is this like break a small tiny number of people?
Well, actually, it'll break everybody who started using Node API, Node GCN. If they're still using an API env, then well, it's not going to break them because that's not going to change. It's still going to be called an API env. The
Right.
only
And
the
the
only people
people,
affected would be the ones who started writing code that says Node API, Node GC env.
right. And those, like people who ran into this before, do we have any sense of which category they'll be in?
To be honest, I'm not sure how many folks have picked up the changes in core, which are currently experimental and which allow them to fix their memory leaks. If people have actually picked up the baton and run with it,
Right.
then those people will be affected.
But
But
that should be a rather small number, right?
presumably, yeah.
Yeah, so we could probably do like, so if the default case doesn't get broken, then I'm a little less concerned, right? Like, so maybe you're right. If we just did a search on GitHub for the Node GCM, which that's possibly going
I
to be much
posted a
more
link.
sensitive.
Sorry to interrupt. I posted
sorry.
a link in chat
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
that
it does
sort of
exactly
does a
that.
search that removes some of our boilerplate files so we can try to see who has what implemented.
Right. So there's MIDI. Okay.
Yeah, just through the search result, I just found 2 actual add-ons use it. The other part are runtime implementers.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Seems that only single developer started to use it.
Right, because it's fairly new, so that kind of makes.
Oh, actually more.
Okay, good. Then let's get it over with quickly before more people start using it. It sounds like.
Yeah, so if we can add the alias and then basically reach out to the, like 3 or 4 projects we could see, just open an issue saying like, warning, we're going to remove this in,
Yeah.
at whatever time we decide, please update.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's experimental, we plan to remove this and, it'll show up in like one of the next minors. Please update to this other one.
I can do that. I'll use this list and I'll post an issue to each of those projects, and after having posted the PR with the rename or the
That's good.
alias. Okay, I'll do that.
For people to switch to this new alias, we would need to propagate this PR to all these previous versions of Node, right? Like, for example, if somebody using this Node 18, in order for them to use new header files, this PR needs to be propagated first, right?
Right, fair. Well, I think if we give them the heads up,
Okay.
we can also say like please follow along as it propagates and watch out for these things landing, because the truth is, you're right. We have to like add the alias, propagate the alias, wait a month, remove the alias, propagate the removal. So this is like a probably like 4 or 5 month process anyway.
Right.
So it's
changing the name doesn't change the parameter. Does that change the signature at all?
no.
Right, okay, so it's not going to have any ABI effect, right?
No,
like that's what
no.
I thought, but I just wanted to be sure on that one.
Yeah, even introducing these types hasn't had any ABI effects. It's completely
Right.
just
Yeah.
it dissolves.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it would need to be across the different versions.
Yeah.
I guess which versions is the Node GC? It's now in all of them, right? Because we worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why experimental works in Node on API. It's because it got propagated all the way back to all supported versions.
Right now, I guess the other thing, yeah, I'm just thinking like as we only need to drop the alias when we publish a new version, like the new Node API version. We don't necessarily push that new Node API version back to every version of Node either, right? So we
Yeah,
could decide if we're doing that.
remember when we realized that the finalizer for thread safe function does not need a Node.js because it's not called from the V8 finalizer. That was another round on top of introducing these types, right? And we couldn't do any work in Node.add-on API until that propagated all the way down. So the same thing will be here. And I think as soon as the PR is up, we can issue this heads up and you know, explain the process that these folks will be facing and that it's going to propagate back, et cetera, et cetera. So the one sort of wrinkle is that if we start documenting that this is the name of the type, then you know, people write code, they compile it against an older version. They're like, no, it's not. It's good. It's no GC. It's not basic. So that, but then again, it's like, okay, well, look at the documentation for your appropriate, you know, version of Node rather than the main. So that there might still be a leak, meaning we will not capture everybody. Because people are writing brand new code against an older version of Node. They look at the older version of the documentation, which doesn't say basic, it says Node.js, and we cannot reach back in time and basically land the documentation and update it for every version of Node. So that could be a small leak, but I think that's okay because it is experimental.
I'm gonna just throw the, like, this is gonna be one defined.
I'm sorry, say again, please. You're a little bit broken
this
up.
is gonna be, the alias is gonna be one defined.
It's not going to be a define. It's probably going to be a type def.
Sure, okay. It's gonna be one type def. So, like,
well,
I'm just
two.
wondering, like,
Okay, technically, it's probably going to be more than one type def because we have to type def the type, and we have to type def the function pointer as well.
okay, there's two type defs. But like, I'm just like doing the sanity check. Like, we just leave those in forever. Does it really cost us that much versus having to worry about, like, the time of opening issues and talking to people, and like, is deleting
Fair.
those two lines really worth it?
That's true. That's a good point.
You know, it's sort of
Yeah.
like, I know it would be nice to be clean, but on the other hand, is it really worth it? We just move it to deprecated and leave it there forever. Like,
It wouldn't be the biggest thing that ever landed in deprecated.
right, exactly. I'm just like, is it? It sounds like a lot of effort to remove two lines, right?
Fair, yeah.
So I think getting it in, like, you know, we get it in, it's good. The sooner it doesn't get used, maybe at some point we can look at it and say, well, really, you know, we did the GitHub search and there's 3 people who use it by the end of, versus like, hey, watch it, then you're gonna have to, by the time it's in everything, we might reassess. But I wouldn't object to just saying, yeah, it's in deprecated and it's there forever. It's like,
Okay. All right, that's fair.
like maybe, and we could even maybe just leave it in as deprecated for experimental, right? Like, if you say I'm going to use the next version of Node.add-on API, like, you've opted into that new version, it could disappear because that one we basically said you will need to do work when you do that, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, okay.
So, okay.
Okay. All right, sounds like a plan. Then that's how we're going to roll.
Okay, any other topics for today? Okay, if not, well, thanks for the discussion, and we'll see everybody in GitHub